The Georgia heat hit like a wall, thick and relentless, clinging to Clarence Daniels' skin as he stepped out of his car to stretch his legs and pray the engine didn't overheat again. The Impala coughed when it idled too long. Its paint faded, its AC barely functioning, and the needle on the gas gauge flirted dangerously with empty. Clarence wasn't supposed to be here, not on this forgotten stretch of highway with $2.47 in his wallet, and no clue how he was going to make it to the job interview in Albany. His last client ghosted him. His business account was frozen, and 2 days ago, he sold his only decent laptop for rent he still couldn't fully cover. But none of that mattered when he saw her. She walked slowly along the shoulder of the road, her frame lean, her stride shaky, like each step hurt, but she kept walking. A dusty backpack hung from one shoulder, her clothes too clean to belong to someone used to hitching rides, her sneakers scuffed but not torn, and her face, pale, flushed with sun, and focused straight ahead, didn't look like someone who'd ever been this close to rock bottom. But she carried herself like someone who had nothing left to lose. Clarence watched her for a few seconds through his cracked windshield, debating, questioning, weighing risks he couldn't afford to take. But something deep inside told him this wasn't a moment to think. This was a moment to act. He rolled forward slowly and pulled up beside her, hand trembling as he rolled the window down. "You all right, miss?" he asked, voice rough from thirst and fatigue. She turned to him, eyes cautious but not afraid, her lips chapped and her face sunburnt, but she didn't flinch. "I just need to get anywhere but here," she said softly, her voice cracking around, the edges like it hadn't been used in hours. Clarence hesitated for a beat, then reached over and unlocked the passenger door with a click that echoed louder than it should have. "Hop in. Ain't got much gas, but I can get you a little farther. Down the road." She stared at the open door like it was a test, then nodded once and climbed in without a word. "I'm Clarence," he said, adjusting the rearview mirror so he could sneak a glance at her face. "Taylor," she murmured, eyes locked on the road ahead. He drove, the silence thick at first, interrupted only by the groans of the car's worn engine and the occasional sigh from Taylor's dry lips. They passed farms with rusted fences, broken billboards, and endless fields of dying grass, and still she didn't speak. Clarence's stomach growled loud enough to shame him, and he shifted in his seat, hoping she hadn't noticed. Without saying a word, she reached into her bag and handed him a granola bar, half smashed, but wrapped. He looked at it, then at her, then back to the road, unsure whether to feel grateful or embarrassed. "Thank you," he said finally, unwrapping it like it was made of gold. She nodded but didn't look at him. "You always pick up strangers?" she asked suddenly. "Not always," Clarence replied. "But today felt different. Different how? Like maybe I was supposed to." She let that hang in the air, neither accepting nor rejecting it, just letting the silence swallow it whole. They pulled into a tiny town 2 hours later, a place with a diner, a gas station, and 3 empty storefronts that told you everything you needed to know about the economy. Clarence parked in front of the diner and reached for his wallet before remembering how empty it was. "I'd buy you something, but I ain't exactly rolling in dollars," he said with a sheepish smile. Taylor shook her head. "You've done more than most would. I'll get my own." He nodded, ready to leave her to it, but her voice stopped him as he turned to go. "Why, did you help me, Clarence?" she asked, genuine curiosity in her voice for the first time. He looked at her, really looked, past the dirt, past the fatigue, into those tired green eyes. "Someone once told me, if all you got left is heart, then you give heart, that's all I got." She stared at him for a long second before nodding. As Clarence walked away, he felt her gaze linger on him, and for a reason he couldn't explain, it made his chest feel lighter. That night, Clarence slept in his car. He couldn't afford a motel, and the heat made it hard to breathe, but his dreams were filled with her face, sad, determined, and strangely familiar. He woke up drenched in sweat and desperation, went to the library to apply for more freelance gigs, and tried to forget her. But she didn't forget him. 3 days later, Clarence saw her again. She was waiting outside the same diner, only this time she was wearing a clean shirt and looked like she'd had more than 5 hours of sleep. He almost didn't recognize her. "You're back," he said, cautiously surprised. "I was looking for you," she replied. Clarence blinked. "Why?" She handed him a folded piece of paper. "I called the number on your car. Daniel's Creative Design, right?" "Yeah, but that site hasn't had an update in months," he admitted. "Well, I looked at it anyway." "You've got real skill, Clarence. Not just talent, vision." He chuckled bitterly. "Tell that to my bank account." She smiled gently. "You ever heard of Monarch Media?" He raised an eyebrow. "Only the billion-dollar empire run by that Malcolm Monroe guy." "I'm his daughter." His jaw dropped. She nodded. "I ran away 2 weeks ago. From all of it. The board meetings, the trust fund, the cameras. I needed to know what the world felt like without money covering everything up." Clarence took a slow step back, trying to make sense of what he was hearing. "And you ended up here?" She smiled faintly. "I was trying to disappear, but then I met someone who reminded me what real looks like." He blinked. "You're telling me you're a millionaire who's been sleeping in motels and hitchhiking?" "No," she said. "I'm a millionaire who finally understands what it feels like to be human." He didn't know what to say to that. "I want to help you," she said softly. "If you'll let me." Clarence scoffed. "Help me how?" "I can't even afford a tank of gas." "I want to invest," she said, her voice steady. "In you." "You don't even know me," he said, his voice quiet now, almost afraid to believe her. "You picked me up when you had nothing. That tells me everything I need to know." He looked down, unable to meet her eyes, the weight of years of failure pressing against his chest like a stone. "You really mean that?" he whispered. "I do." And in that moment, something shifted in Clarence Daniels's world. Something deep, like an old door cracking open in a room he'd forgotten he had, inside him. He took a long breath, nodded once and said, "Okay, let's build something." Neither of them could have imagined what would come next. Not the clients they'd attract, not the impact they'd make, not the way two broken people would start piecing each other back together one day at a time, but they were about to find out. Because when you give from the heart, even when you have nothing else, life sometimes gives you everything in return. 3 months passed like smoke in the wind, and Clarence Daniels could hardly recognize the man staring back at him in the mirror. His shirt was pressed now, his laptop new. His design studio finally had a door with a name on it: Daniels and Monroe Creative. What started in the front seat of a sun-baked Impala had turned into a registered business, a brand strategy firm, and more importantly, a second chance. Taylor kept her identity under wraps, letting Clarence be the face of the business, insisting, "People respect his work without leaning on her last name. We're building something real," she'd say, "and real doesn't need legacy money to speak for it." Every morning, she showed up with coffee and ideas, her energy humming like static before a storm, brilliant, sharp, and wildly alive. Clarence worked harder than he ever had in his life, not for the money, not even for success, but because, for the first time, someone truly believed in him. And when someone believes in you when you've got nothing to offer, you don't let them down. The clients started small: local bakeries, a tutoring center, a jazz band trying to go digital. But the reviews came fast and loud. "He saved my business. They gave us a brand, a voice, a future." Within 8 weeks, they were turning away more projects than they could take. But not everything was smooth beneath the surface. Taylor's phone would buzz late at night, and she'd quickly silence it, her face tightening just slightly before. She brushed it off. Clarence never pried. He knew what it felt like to be caged and didn't want to be another set of bars. Still, the tension built like a storm front waiting to break. Then one Thursday evening, after a pitch meeting downtown, she looked at him across the passenger seat and said, "I need to tell you something." Clarence turned off the engine, heart pounding slow and deep. "My father knows where I am," she said. "He's coming tomorrow." Clarence blinked. "What does that mean?" She looked away. "He's not angry. He's confused, hurt, maybe. I didn't leave a note. I just left." "Is he coming to take you back?" "I don't know." "Do you want to go back?" She didn't answer. The next day came too fast. Clarence stood in the office, pacing, unable to sit, his stomach twisting into knots. At 3:02 p.m., a black SUV pulled up outside. A man stepped out, tall, gray at the temples, impeccably dressed, and paused as if the building in front of him was a mystery he didn't know how to approach. Clarence opened the door. "Mr. Monroe?" he asked. The man nodded slowly, eyes scanning Clarence with curiosity and something else. Worry, maybe. "I'm Clarence Daniels." "I know," the man said, shaking his hand firmly. "Taylor's told me a lot about you." Clarence braced himself. "And I suppose you're here to take her back?" Malcolm Monroe looked at him for a long moment, then said, "No, I'm here to understand what gave her the strength to leave." Before Clarence could reply, Taylor walked in from the back, her hair tied up, a smudge of ink on her palm from the latest design revisions. "Dad?" she said softly. He looked at her, like a man seeing sunlight after years in a cave. "You look happy," he said. "I am. Are you safe?" "Yes." He nodded, eyes glistening just barely. "Then I'm not here to drag you home. I'm just here to know the people who brought you peace." That night, Clarence and Taylor sat on the rooftop of the office, legs dangling, over the edge, their food in takeout containers balanced beside them. "I thought he'd be angrier," she said. "I thought he'd threaten to sue me," Clarence added. She laughed, loud and free, the sound of someone who remembered what it felt like to be suffocated and now chose to breathe. "I think he saw what I see," she whispered. Clarence looked over. "What's that?" "That you never needed saving. You just needed a shot." The moon rose high above them, silent and soft, watching two souls who had met in brokenness and stitched something beautiful from the ashes. They never talked about love. Not directly. But the way she leaned her head on his shoulder and the way he didn't flinch said more than words ever could. The business grew beyond their wildest dreams. They hired staff, mentored teens, opened scholarships for Black students in design and media. They didn't just build a company, they built a movement. Clarence started speaking at schools, telling his story, not with pride, but with honesty. "I had nothing," he'd say. "Then I gave what I did have, my heart, and the universe responded." Taylor would sit in the back, sometimes smiling, sometimes crying. She donated anonymously to shelters, gave away laptops to struggling students, and never told anyone about her wealth, because now her richest treasure was in watching lives transform. Then came the day Clarence's old landlord called. "I just heard about you in Forbes," he laughed. "Guess I should have been nicer when your rent was late." Clarence didn't gloat. He just smiled and said, "It all worked out the way it was meant to." One evening, as they closed up the office together, Taylor turned to him, eyes brighter than ever before. "I think I'm ready to face my family again. Not as the daughter they controlled, but as the woman I became out here. With you." Clarence looked at her, his throat tight. "You were always that woman, Taylor. You just needed someone to remind you." She took his hand. "And you reminded me." And finally, they kissed, not with fireworks or music swelling in the background, but with the quiet certainty of two people who had walked through fire and found each other on the other side. In a world obsessed with fame, money, and speed, their story traveled slowly, by word of mouth in quiet testimonials, through communities uplifted by their kindness. And when people asked them how it all began, they'd say with a smile, "It started with an old car, an empty tank of gas, and a simple act of kindness that changed everything." Because sometimes the richest souls wear worn shoes, and sometimes the biggest miracles begin on the side of a dusty road. He gave from his heart when he had nothing left. She gave him a future when he least expected one. Together, they proved that compassion is the most powerful currency in the world, and no matter where you come from or how lost you feel, the right connection at the right time can change the course of your entire life. Not with magic, not with luck, but with humanity.